Fly low, hit hard. Napalm. If anything typified the indiscriminate horror of the Vietnamese War and the tactics of ground attack or strike missions, it was the giant orange flame of a bomb with naves. The 2,000 degrees heat could often be felt in the cockpit of the following aircraft. One of the enduring problems facing Allied pilots in this bitter war was that they could almost never see the target clearly. Therefore, against suspected Viet Cong hiding in the jungle, big, high-explosive and napalm bombs seemed as good an answer as anything. At the start of the war, the U.S. adopted the role of military advisor to the government of South Vietnam. In the Farm Gate program, started in 1962, Vietnamese pilots are taught not only to fly the North American T-28D, an advanced trainer converted to a close support aircraft, but also to go to war in it. Its main weapons were the 50 caliber gun, small bombs, and 5-inch rockets. Based at Bien Ho were USAF Douglas B-26 Invaders. These speedy twin-engined attack bombers dated from World War II, but combined heavy weapon load, good speed, toughness, and long mission endurance. Following their arrival, the crews and aircraft were prepared for action in the skies over Vietnam. Ground attack training was undertaken by both the USAF's T-28s and the B-26s, usually at low level and in shallow dives. Practice runs continued with the T-28s, using 2.75-inch rockets fired from pods below the wings. These were followed by low-level training drops made by B-26s using iron bombs and rockets. And finally came the dreaded napalm. The lessons learned on the ranges were then put into practice during the in-country war against the Viet Cong. The little Northrop F-5A Freedom Fighter was only used by the U.S. Air Force in a single squadron, deployed to Vietnam in an evaluation role. Called Operation Scotia Tiger, the unit of 12 aircraft flew 2,659 combat sorties in the winter of 1965-66. Many missions included dropping 1,000-pound Mark 83 general-purpose bombs aimed with the gun sight in a diving attack. The same sight could be used in firing the twin M39 nose guns, each of 20mm caliber. From 1962, Da Nang became one of the chief South Vietnamese Air Force bases, and for more than 10 years, it, like many other airfields, was to grow and grow as billions of dollars were poured into concrete and protective revetments. Also included, of course, were bombs, rockets, cannon shells, and other ordnance on a scale not seen since World War II. Most of the bombs were of 500, 750, and 1,000 pound size. When each bomb is delivered to the airbase, it is minus its fuse. The fuses which arm the bomb have themselves to be armed so that they can detonate the bomb's main explosive. The armed fuse is then screwed into the nose, or sometimes the tail, of the bomb, finally being locked and secured by wire. One of the aircraft used was the B-57, which had enough range to penetrate deep into North Vietnam to attack, for example, the growing complex of airfields. Other targets included the infiltration routes from the north used by the Viet Cong. Jungle targets could also be engaged by a B-57's forward-firing 20mm cannon. From the earliest days of active U.S. involvement, a major part was played by the carrier-based aircraft of the Navy and Marines, operating from Yankee and Dixie stations. Aboard carriers such as USS Constellation, red-vested ordnance men load the aircraft with bombs, rockets, and other stores. Every man on the flight deck proclaims his job by the color of his vest. Bombs are armed with their fuses and the safety wires attached. These will pull free once the bomb is released from the aircraft. Sheer muscle power is used to load a quad launcher for the massive 5-inch Zuni rocket, a spin-stabilized folding fin weapon, like a much larger edition of the 2.75-inch missile. The Vought A-7A Corsair II attack aircraft was not even designed in 1964, but the first was flown in 1965, and by 1967 they were flying combat missions in Southeast Asia, setting a speed record for the gestation of a modern airplane. Derived from the F-8 Crusader fighter, the A-7 was designed to carry very heavy bomb loads over a typical combat radius of at least 700 miles. Carrier-based ground attack aircraft were a vital weapon in the prosecution of the air war over Southeast Asia. Together with land-based assets, they were tasked to strike targets in both South and North Vietnam. In contrast, the attacking aircraft themselves presented highly visible and clearly defined targets. And even in the late 1960s, the air defenses of North Vietnam were well on the way to becoming the most powerful, in terms of numbers of guns, anywhere in the world. Besides ground emplacements, guns were also mounted on barges and vehicles. The opposition comprised tens of thousands of infantry weapons, plus dedicated flak in calibers from 12.7 millimeter up to 100 millimeters. The guns employed primitive mechanical sights, but the sheer volume of fire meant that occasionally some rounds struck home, resulting in catastrophe for the attacking aircraft. Even today, most low-level attack pilots regard triple anti-aircraft fire with at least as much respect as they do surface-to-air missiles. Nevertheless, during most of the early years of the Vietnam War, it was still possible for the attacking aircraft to fly at quite comfortable heights above the ground, say from 500 to 5,000 feet. From here, for instance, Marine Corps A-4 Skyhawks, using Zuni rockets, could spot the target and then make a prolonged diving attack using the front gun sight in the depressed reticle mode. The Zuni, like other unguided rockets, was not a precision weapon. Occasionally, the target was clearly seen and had to be hit with precision. The overrun Special Forces camp near Khe Sanh in early 1968 was a good example. U.S. warplanes pressed home their attacks at point-blank range, putting down napalm, salvos of rockets, and many other kinds of ordnance. At this time, the Air Force's main tactical reconnaissance aircraft was the McDonnell RF-101C Voodoo, and several were shot down during their daring missions to ease the pressure on the Khe Sanh garrison. Precision attacks at low level increasingly ruled out using normal slick iron bombs. A-4 Skyhawks therefore pressed home their attacks using snake-eye retarded bombs. These are slicks with added tail retarders in the form of spring-open air brakes, which jerk the bomb back after release to let the attacking scooters escape the explosion. Aiming needs skill and training. Even so, many aircraft were shot down. The greatest effort was always made to recover the crew. Many were snatched from under the noses of the VC by Jolly Green Giant helicopters. This undoubtedly saved them from the harsh treatment they would have received as guests at the Hanoi Hilton. One of the greatest airplanes in Vietnam was the immortal Skyraider, flown by the South Vietnamese Air Force, the VNAF, and also by the Navy, Marines, and Air Force. As an escorting battle wagon for the Jolly Green Rescue Team, it became known as Sandy, though its common nickname was the Spad. Some were single-seat A-1H versions, and others the wide cockpit A-1E. The VNAF received considerable numbers of both, as well as a few A-1Gs and Js. Their Skyraiders flew more attack sorties than any other single VNAF type. Most were equipped with 4 20mm guns and could carry at least 4 tons of assorted ordnance on 15 hardpoints. A-1H Skyraiders often worked with an FAC, a forward air controller, who orbited at 95 miles per hour just above the jungle in his vulnerable, unarmored, little Cessna 01E Bird Dog. On the FAC's directions, the Spads would dive to the attack using slick bombs and the 20mm guns. They could also fly missions lasting up to 9 hours. As the enemy defenses grew stronger, so it became increasingly necessary to go in low and fast using snake eyes. These snake eyes are brought out on their jack-up bomb trolley already fused and are loaded onto a Marine Corps F-4 Phantom at Da Nang. Before the trolley is removed, red flagged safety pins are fitted between the bomb and wing hardpoint. Just before taxiing out, the flagged safety pins are removed and shown to the pilot. The airplanes are parked inside strong, blast-proof revetments, a further sign of the enemy's growing power. Previously, many aircraft had been destroyed by locally mounted VC attacks using mortars, rockets, and even satchel charges. Earlier, the F-4 had often been used as a medium-level bomber, dropping its bombs on the command of an F-4 Pathfinder or a B-66 or other suitably equipped lead ship. Though Snake Eyes were much more accurate, Marine Phantoms also continued to make strafing attacks using gun pods and 2.75-inch rockets. Camouflaged Phantom F-4Cs of the U.S. Air Force's 558th Tactical Fighter Squadron operated out of Cam Ranh Bay in 1968. Each mission would normally start with a detailed briefing followed by careful preparation of the aircraft and its ordnance. Engine start would come about halfway through the mission period. The air bases of South Vietnam were huge, fully equal to those of other top-line air forces, and there might be a 2-mile taxi run to get to the downwind end of the active runway. The whole squadron might sit on the runway, awaiting orders to take off and specific targeting instructions. Taking off in threes, full afterburner is used, using a lot of fuel. At a carefully prearranged location, and without using radio, a rendezvous was made with a KC-135 tanker. As the KC-135 uses the flying boom system, it can refuel only one aircraft at a time, and in turbulent air, it often takes quite a time for the boomer aboard the tanker to fly the extensible boom into the Phantom's receiver receptacle. On this mission, as on so many others, the F-4s were tasked with making steep diving attacks on suspected VC targets along one of South Vietnam's rivers. Similar Air Force missions were flown against highly defended North Vietnamese military and strategic targets north of the demilitarized zone. A large explosion and a huge pall of smoke marks a successful strike. It was soon found that the F-4's lack of an internal gun was a serious shortcoming. The only quick answer was to carry an external gun pod on the center line pylon. The SUU-16A pod was loaded with 1,200 rounds of 20mm ammunition and was fired through a 6-barreled M61 gun. The M61 can fire at 4,000 or 6,000 rounds per minute. A minor drawback of the pod is that its accuracy is not quite as good as that of an internally mounted gun. In fact, the Phantom can carry 3 of these powerful gun pods, giving a theoretical strike rate of 300 shells per second, though this armament combination was seldom used in practice. A large proportion of the tactical attack missions flown in Vietnam were intended to disrupt supply along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. This was not one road, but a network, many of the routes passing through neighboring Laos. A number of techniques were adopted to try to stop the supplies getting through, especially the movement of trucks by night. But as was so often the case in Vietnam, the targets were elusive and ill-defined. Where the trail was restricted, in particular in areas such as the Mu Gai Pass, the problem was to deliver accurately bombs or rockets onto the narrow road itself, even with new, smart weapons. In an effort to stop trucks at night, a completely new kind of attack airplane was invented. The result was the AC-47 Spooky, universally known as Puff the Magic Dragon. Outfitted with 3 minigun pods, all on pivoted mounts firing sideways and down to the left, each pod fired 7.62mm rifle caliber ammunition at an average of 4,000 rounds per minute. Keeping in a steady banked turn, the gunship could pour fire into the target from all points of the compass. The idea seemed pretty effective, so after further experience with other gunship conversions, the Air Force contracted for a veritable battleship of the sky. The AC-130 was far bigger and heavier, and its engine power was roughly 8 times as great as the AC-47. Nothing like it had ever been seen before. It was, in a way, a high-tech counterpart of the ancient galleons, in that it had batteries of guns pointing out to the side, again to the left, so that they could be brought to bear in a left-hand turn. But the Herky-Bird gunship not only marked an advance in firepower, it also carried every possible form of night sensor, including radar, low-light TV, a laser, and perhaps most important, a sensitive infrared detector with which the crew could see a detailed thermal picture of everything on the ground below. As far as possible, the AC-130s kept above effective small arms range, but their own guns remained highly effective. The first version, the AC-130A, had 4 6-barrel 20mm and 4 7.62 miniguns. Soon the AC-130E arrived, with a pair of 40mm guns. These were versions of the famous Bofors gun, firing high-velocity 2-pounder shells loaded by hand in clips. The final AC-130H version replaced one of the 40s with a massive 105mm howitzer, one of the biggest guns ever routinely mounted in an airplane. In the war-torn Middle East, Israel Aircraft Industries, already familiar with the French-built Mirage, found itself trying to fill a gap caused by France's refusal to supply a batch of Mirages already paid for. The result, achieved in stages, was the Kfir, which is Hebrew for lion cub. The airframe is basically that of the Mirage 5, though the most obvious difference is the canard foreplanes mounted on the sides of the engine inlets. These were added in the C2 version, which has upgraded all Israeli avionics. Internally, the biggest change is the replacement of the French Attar engine by the more powerful American J-79, an engine first supplied to Israel with the F-4 Phantom. This enhances the Kfir's high flight performance, while the canard wings improve takeoff, landing, low-speed handling, and maneuverability at all speeds, especially with heavy weapons loads. Kfir can carry a diversity of weapon loads, and thanks to its canards, plus small strakes along the nose, modified wing leading edges and other improvements, it can combine heavy loads with good field performance and in-flight agility. Weapons can include Shafrir or Python air-to-air missiles and a wide range of smart laser-guided bombs, Mavericks, Shrike anti-radar missiles, and various anti-airfield dispensers and concrete dibbers for breaking up runways. Kfir has 2 internal 30mm cannons and has been combat-proven in both the air-to-air and air-to-ground roles. A braking parachute is routinely used for landing. Another country with a small population but an important defense industry is Sweden. Her policy of strict neutrality has resulted in the famous SAAB companies producing an unbroken succession of highly successful warplanes, of which the most powerful is the Viggen. Powered by a huge afterburning turbofan, the AJ-37 attack Viggen is the first and most numerous of a variety of versions of this aircraft. From the start, Viggen was designed to operate away from vulnerable air bases, using instead short lengths of highway or roads and other pre-surveyed locations. It therefore has a large delta wing, tandem wheel landing gear, and a thrust reverser to shorten the already short landing run. The latest warplane to enter service with France's Armée de l'Air is the Dassault-Breguet Mirage 2000. At first glance, it looks as if the designers had gone back to the original tailless delta configuration of the first Mirage flown in 1955, but in fact, the 2000 is a very much more advanced aircraft. In the attack mission, an Atlas targeting pod can be used with smart laser-guided bombs and air-to-surface missiles. The 2000 can also carry the BAP-100 and the Durandal anti-runway weapons. Various unguided rockets can be fired from underwing pods. Also available is the Beluga cluster weapon, which showers the enemy with 151 bomblets. The Mirage 2000 is also tasked with tactical nuclear strike. The Jaguar is very much an attack aircraft. The small wing gives the pilot a less eyeball-shaking ride when attacking at low level and at high speed. The high wing position also enables Jaguars to take off from rough fields and from short stretches of highway. The two European operators of Jaguar are France and Britain. These Jaguars are destined for the Sultan of Oman's Air Force and have the same chisel nose as those of the Royal Air Force, which houses a laser ranger and marked target seeker. On takeoff, the tiny Adour engines are opened up into full afterburn. Despite the small engines, the Jaguar packs a considerable punch because in addition to having two 30mm internal guns, it can carry 10,500 pounds of assorted ordnance on 5 hardpoints. Most British Jaguars have a self-contained inertial navigation system, which enables them to fly at close to the speed of sound at the lowest level without emitting any telltale signals. RAF Jaguars have recently had their inertial and weapon aiming systems upgraded to bring them fully into line with the latest standard. Tough training missions are flown through the glens of Scotland and the valleys of Wales with carefully monitored precision turning points or weapon targets, after which the aircraft can be rapidly prepared for its next mission. This aircraft, the Harrier, is unique. As it is the only modern warplane that does not need an airfield, it could be the only kind of combat aircraft able to survive the devastating opening exchange that might herald or precede any war between the major powers. The Harrier could hardly be simpler. The pilot has just one throttle lever, plus a second lever with which he selects the angle of the engine's 4 nozzles, which can be used for vertical takeoff or landing or to assist in a rolling takeoff. The U.S. Marines found that VIFing, vectoring in forward flight, is a remarkable way of making the Harrier perform seemingly impossible maneuvers in a dogfight. RAF Harriers have an inertial navigation system, radar warning system, and a nose laser. There are also 2 30mm cannon and a HUD, a head-up display, to assist in precision aiming of the weapons. It is possible to carry 8,000 pounds of external stores, but about 5,300 pounds is the usual maximum. Because of the Harrier's low fuel consumption, The combat radius is impressive when related to the small fuel capacity and compact size of the aircraft. From the original Harrier was developed the AV-8A and then the AV-8B for the U.S. Marine Corps, much of the redesign being done by McDonnell Aircraft at St. Louis in partnership with British Aerospace. What the Marines wanted was a superior bomb truck. So the AV-8B, or Harrier II, has a much bigger wing with greater lift and a 50% increase in fuel capacity. The new wing also provides room for 7 pylons, or 9 in the case of the RAF Harrier GR5, on which can be hung no less than 17,000 pounds of weapons of almost every conceivable kind. Sidewinder dogfight missiles are normally carried for self-defense, and a wide range of missiles can be carried for attack. Free takeoffs can be made from the flight decks of amphibious assault ships to give close support to Marines going ashore on a hostile beach. The AV-8B is fitted with a 5-barreled 25mm gun, and the angle rate bombing system is used for precision iron bomb attacks. Though a small airplane, Harrier can carry a vast variety of stores over ranges much greater than many bigger aircraft. It can fly from the U.S. to Europe without in-flight air refueling. One of the few aircraft that can beat the Harrier II in combat radius, and also beat everything else except for the giant bombers, is the swing-wing F-111. Originally planned as a fighter, it became a superior attack aircraft. Taxiing out of its hardened NATO shelter at Lakenheath in England, this large, streamlined aircraft, a U.S. Air Force F-111F, is designed to fly low and hit hard. The F-111's pilot is seated to the left. On his right is the Weapon Systems Operator, or WISO, whose job is to manage the extensive electronic systems. Thanks to a device called terrain-following radar, the F-111 pioneered the modern method of low-level attack, in which the aircraft is automatically made to maneuver, if necessary at full throttle, only just above the ground. The F-111 also pioneered the variable sweep swing wing. Despite all its original avionics, today's F-111 needs more. The most important add-on is PAVE-TAC, a massive pod carried onto the aircraft's belly, which provides the WISO with pictures enabling him to acquire, track, and hit any target in any kind of weather or at night. Such equipment was used by F-111s during the raid on Libya in 1986. The first PAVE-TAC view shows the approach to the Libyan coast. This is followed by a low-level run over Tripoli, including the Aziziya barracks. Finally, the PAVTAC FLIR, or forward-looking infrared sensor, picks up Soviet-made Ilyushin 76 transports on the military side of Tripoli Airport. As the aircraft passes over them, they are hit by bombs. The mighty F-111 can reach out to great distances and drop ordinary slicks exactly on target from a height of 200 feet in a snow blizzard, and that is enough to worry any potential enemy. There could hardly be a greater contrast than the little Douglas A-4 Skyhawk, variously known as the Scooter, the Bantam Bomber, and in honor of its designer, Heinemann's Hot Rod. The A-4 has a wing so small that it does not need to fold, even though the Skyhawk was designed for carrier operations. It played a major role in the Vietnam War, especially the tandem two-seat TA-4F version, operated as a forward air control aircraft by the Marines, usually from land bases. Able to carry a weapon load of up to 9,000 pounds, the A-4s mainly used napalm, slicks, snake eyes, and missiles, amongst them 2.75-inch rockets fired from the center fuselage hardpoint. These rockets, and the bigger Zunis, were sometimes used with special pyrotechnic or smoke warheads to mark the location of surface targets. Skyhawks played a major part in the Middle East, flying with the Israeli Air Force, and that country specializes in Skyhawk updates. In the US, the latest versions have a head-up display and angle rate bombing system for much better accuracy in weapon delivery. Apart from the dedicated Marine Forward Air Control version, the twin-seat OA-4M, the Skyhawk has no place in the frontline strength of US forces, but it is still very important in many other countries. Newest of the warplanes of the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps, the McDonnell Douglas FA-18 Hornet is unique in being designed from the start to be equally good at both the fighter and the attack missions. Its task was to replace the F-4 Phantom in the fighter mission and the A-7 Corsair in the attack role, and in both cases to be able to operate from carriers or airfields. The Hornet was derived from the Northrop YF-17 light fighter, and Northrop is now the principal subcontractor. In some respects, including cost and combat radius, the FA-18 did not meet the challenging requirements. But for anyone who wants a single type of all-can-do combat aircraft, there are few that can equal it. The largest missile carried by the Hornet is the AGM-84 Harpoon anti-ship cruise missile, but many other types of missile and ordnance can be carried. Export sales to Australia, Canada, and Spain were won in competition with the F-16, partly because of the FA-18's ability to fire the Sparrow medium-range radar-guided air-to-air missile. Today's FA-18As and Cs can fly a tremendous range of missions, carrying many warloads, and do it with just one man in the cockpit. The reason lies partly in the multi-mode pulse Doppler radar, and partly in the outstanding cockpit. which for the first time replaced conventional dial-type instruments by 3 large multifunction color electronic displays. Up to 17,000 pounds of weapons or tanks can be carried on 7 pylons. There is also provision for Sidewinder air-to-air missiles on wingtip rails. General Electric provides the high bypass ratio turbofan engines for this strange bird, the Fairchild A-10A. The A-10 is officially the Thunderbolt II, but is more commonly called the Warthog. It is a dedicated killer of tanks and contains the most powerful gun ever built into an aircraft. The GE Avenger cannon, officially the GAU-8A, fires the most powerful 30mm ammunition ever made. A special loader is needed to crank the rounds aboard the aircraft. Other stores can include 2.75-inch rockets. Slick general-purpose bombs can also be carried, and up to 16,000 pounds of weapons can be hung on the 11 hardpoints, though one is often used to carry a jammer pod. The pilot climbs the sheer face of the fuselage and settles himself in his ejection seat, deep inside a titanium bath of armor resistant to anti-aircraft fire of up to 23mm caliber. On takeoff, the wide-span, unswept wings overcome the weight after a short run and, once airborne, provide enough lift for sustained maneuvers at the lowest possible level. Every Warthog mission needs non-stop concentration. The whole point of staying low, down in the weeds, is to avoid flak and surface-to-air missiles. It's all up to the pilot to aim his gun correctly. Both the gun and free-fall bombs are aimed using the regular HUD sight. A simple laser seeker is carried for tracking targets designated by friendly troops, but it is frankly admitted that the A-10 was designed to a cost and does not have all the avionic aids that would be needed to fight at night or in adverse weather in Central Europe. Warthogs normally operate in pairs, the wingman covering the lead aircraft while it is concentrating on its attack. The twin power plants are situated high on the fuselage above the wings, which help to shield the engines from heat-seeking surface-to-air missiles. The A-10 relies upon its agility to keep out of trouble, while still remaining close to the battlefront to provide rapid anti-armor strikes. Most air-to-surface guided weapons, including the Maverick missile, can be carried aboard the A-10, and accurate attacks are ensured with the onboard electronic systems. But the real tank-killing element is the devastating Avenger cannon. The Thunderbolt II can carry 1,200 rounds of ammunition. Each is the size of a milk bottle and fires a shell containing a core of depleted uranium able to punch through the armor of a battle tank. These shells can be spewed out at the rate of 2,100 or 4,200 per minute. In every sense, the A-10 flies low and hits hard. As beautiful as the A-10 is functional, the Air Force's F-15 Eagle has for 14 years been the West's #1 air combat fighter. It was so carefully designed as a one-mission aircraft that the Air Force's battle cry was, "Not a pound for air to ground." In other words, don't compromise this fighter by trying to make it carry bombs. Surprise, surprise. Today, the F-15E is the USAF's dual-role fighter tasked mainly in the air-to-ground mission. The F-15E can carry an almost indecent load of Mark 20 Rockeye cluster dispensers, as well as most other iron bombs, rockets, and air-to-surface ordnance. The F-15E, with conformal tanks, has an impressive internal fuel capacity of 3,570 US gallons, and it can carry a further 1,830 gallons in 3 drop tanks. On an attack mission with a heavy load of ordnance, it may well be tasked to take on fuel from a tanker, such as the KC Extender. This thrusts its boom into a receptacle above the root of the left wing. Today, the E version is in full production, not least of its features being a completely new cockpit for a crew of 2, with new multifunction displays, which in most respects are similar to those of the European Tornado. Originally powered by the same engine as the F-15, but with 1 instead of 2, the General Dynamics F-16 Fighting Falcon quickly developed from a light day fighter of very limited capability into a multi-role warplane able to do practically anything and in any weather. It is said that flying the F-16 is like riding on a telegraph pole. This is because the pilot reclines in a lean-back seat inside a bubble canopy, giving him a fantastic view in all directions, though at first he feels very exposed. He need not worry much about being shot at by other aircraft, because the F-16 is about the most agile airplane in the sky. Early versions had an M61 gun and sidewinders, but it was soon realized they could also carry a bomb load of 12,000 pounds on 7 hardpoints. The Fighting Falcon can also carry 2 lantern pods for flying precision attack missions in bad weather or at night. One of these pods contains a forward-looking infrared receiver which feeds a high-resolution thermal picture of the terrain ahead into the pilot's HUD. Here we see what the pilot sees, and it makes no difference if it is a moonless night or dense fog. He can see the terrain ahead just the same. The no-turn symbol warns him of an obstruction, in this case, hills to the right, the arrow showing which side is dangerous. If he is at really low level, it will not be long before he gets a pull-up signal, which tells him there is an obstruction ahead. The targeting pod's FLIR is used to locate surface targets, to track them, and then to provide designation for smart weapons. The Tornado Interdiction Strike, or IDS, epitomizes the very latest capability in flying low and hitting hard. Operated in virtually similar versions by many other air forces and navies, the GR-1 version of the Tornado IDS serves with the Royal Air Force. The GR-1 is powered by a pair of amazingly compact RB-199 engines, each rated at about 17,000 pounds in full afterburner, and yet only 127 inches long, complete with a thrust reverser. Tornado can certainly fly lower than any other aircraft in the world. It can also carry a heavier load of more types of weapon than any other attack aircraft and can deliver these with greater accuracy. It can therefore certainly hit hard. In the unloaded or clean condition, it can fly low at a higher speed than any other aircraft. At a pinch, it can fly 800 knots. That's 902 miles per hour at 60 feet. That's the kind of performance you need today to avoid getting shot down. In the nose is a multi-mode radar and a terrain-following radar. Other features include variable sweep swing wings, an inertial navigation system, fly-by-wire flight controls, and the best low-level ride qualities of any warplane in service anywhere. Even at 800 knots, at treetop height, the pilot and navigator can sit in comfort, working at full efficiency. Tornado can carry up to 10 tons of ordnance, but normally carries a mix of about 5 tons, plus tanks, a chaff pod, and a jammer pod. Though it needs airfields, the kind of target Tornado itself is specially designed to destroy, the aircraft can land in short distances using its twin target type reversers. On takeoff, its outspread wings with high lift slats and flaps can get it quickly off the ground. To hone their skills, all Tornado squadrons fly low-level missions. Some are flown down Welsh valleys or over German bombing ranges. They are flown during exercises in the USA in formation, flying in cloud, or at night, which needs special skills. The navigator has the most comprehensive head-up and head-down displays for pinpoint navigation. The two crew together collaborate to put ordinary iron bombs or retarded bombs exactly on target. Normally, the navigator puts the bombing pipper, or aiming box, on the target in the radar display, and the computer will release the bombs at the right instant. If the target does not show on radar, you fix the target's exact position in relation to an obvious point nearby that does show, and make an offset attack. The bombs ought to hit pretty well dead center, even from a release at over 500 knots. One is reminded of what an F-111 pilot said years ago. No, we don't have smart weapons, but we do have smart airplanes.